Today you become an 18th century Edo Yoshiwara Oiran. When I was 9, my family sold me through the Great Red Gate, and from that day on I never went home again. I was born in a starving mountain village in Ekigo, the kind of place where rice was scarce, and my father wore the same patched indigo robe through every season of the year. My mother wept the whole night I was born, because I was a girl, and a girl in our village simply meant another mouth that could never be married off. When I was 8, a brutal famine took 3 children from our village, and my father stared up at the smoke-blackened ceiling beam each night without a single word. In the spring I turned 9. A man in a deep indigo haori coat appeared at the village edge and quietly asked to see my parents' daughter. He set down a clinking pouch of silver coins on our low table, and that was the year I learned a small girl could be exchanged for 1 full year of rice. On the morning I left, my mother pressed a tiny cloth bundle into my hands holding half a wheat cake and 2 copper coins she had saved over 3 long years. After 7 days of walking we reached Edo, and from afar I saw the great red omen gate of Yoshiwara, lanterns blazing while crowds flowed beneath like a river. The broker handed me to the brothel mistress, who lifted my chin under the lantern, looked me over, and said I was clean enough to keep as a Kamuro girl. A Kamuro is a small attendant who follows a senior Oiran, pouring tea, laying bedding, lighting pipes, grinding ink, and learning to read every flicker of an adult face. My first year was waka poetry and brushwork, taught by a blind old woman who slapped my palm with a bamboo ruler each time my stroke wandered off the line. My second year was shamisen and dance, my fingertips raw and bleeding on the strings, while my elder sister told me an Oiran's hands must learn to speak. My third year was incense, the game of Go, the 32 ways to tie an obi sash, and how to lower my eyes and smile faintly when a man looked my way. The Yarite manager told us a Yoshiwara woman carries 3 weapons: her face, her words, and her gift for making any man feel like a hero in her presence. At night, I often heard laughter and the clink of sake cups drifting from my elder sister's chamber, but back then I did not yet understand what those sounds meant. At 14, I was promoted to Shinzo, wearing my first long-sleeved furosode kimono while my elder sister carefully painted the famous Yoshiwara vermilion onto my lips. A Shinzo is not yet allowed to entertain alone, only to pour sake at banquets and laugh politely at jokes the patrons had already told 1,000 times before. In the winter of my 14th year, I improvised a waka verse at a banquet, and a samurai patron rewarded me on the spot with a slender silver hairpin. I hid that silver hairpin beneath my futon for 3 full years, because it was the very first thing in Yoshiwara that truly belonged to me alone. At 18 I rose to Oiran, and every woodblock printer in Edo competed to carve my face into the ukiyo-e prints sold along the Nakanocho Main Street. An Oiran walks with a special figure-8 step on 3-tiered black geta clogs, each stride carving a slow curve along the polished wooden corridor floor. My first Oirandochu procession took a full hour to reach the tea house across the street, while spectators packed Nakanocho until you could not push through. That year the men who begged for my company included daimyo lords, rich merchants, and famous playwrights, and their folded calling cards piled up beside my door. Before a patron could meet me, he had to send sake, waka poems, and bolts of silk 3 times over, and only then would I sit down and listen to him. I learned how to make a powerful man, who commanded armies and provinces, sweat in his palms before me like a nervous boy at his first festival night. At 22, I met a quiet Kyoto silk merchant named Suman, and he was the first man whose presence made my heart stumble out of its careful rhythm. He never spoke flowery words, only sent me each month a bolt of fine Kyoto silk along with a plain white card bearing my name in his elegant brushstrokes. I began to count secretly in the brothel ledger at night, calculating how many more years of saving might one day let him buy out my long contract. That winter he sent me a slender white jade hairpin, 2 characters carved into its tail meaning together, and that was the promise he gave me in silence. But I had forgotten that a Yoshiwara woman should never accept a promise, because she does not even hold the legal right to sign her own name on paper. At 24, his wife appeared at our gate and laid down a stack of paper bills worth 10 times the price of buying out my full contract from the house. She did not raise her voice or curse me. She simply said one quiet sentence: "My husband is unwell. Please do not write back to him from this day forward." I wrapped the white jade hairpin in pale silk and entrusted it to a messenger bound for Kyoto, attaching no letter at all because I could not find the right words. That night, I played the shamisen alone in my room, and the next morning my patrons remarked that the Oiran's music carried a strange chill they had never heard. I finally understood the deepest rule of Yoshiwara, that no matter how raw the pain, you smile, and no matter how cold the night, you pour the sake steadily. From 25 onward, my name began to fade from the new ukiyo-e prince, while every fashionable artist now drew the rising 16-year-old courtesan called Oborozuki. At 26, the brothel master moved me from the great house to the middle house. My chamber shrunk by half, and only one young Komuro girl remained at my side. At 27, I began to cough, and once or twice a faint streak of red appeared in the white cloth, but I did not dare to tell a single soul about it. I asked the brothel master if he might let me redeem my contract early, and he opened his ledger and showed me 300 ryo of debt still owing in my name. He said the silver I had saved over the years had long since gone toward room and board, kimono, and medicine, and the account left me with nothing whatsoever. At 28, I was sent down to the lowest shelf houses of Yoshiwara, where most patrons were drunken porters who stumbled in from the cold riverside streets at night. I coughed through the night beneath a thin patched futon, and a younger courtesan next door brought me a small bowl of ginger broth and refused even 1 copper coin. In the spring of my 29th year, I looked into a worn mirror and saw clearly that the famous Oborozuki of Yoshiwara was already gone and would never return. At 30, the master told me I could no longer attract patrons, and I had 2 choices: stay on as a household servant or somehow find my own way out the gate. I walked out the Great Omen Gate and turned to look back, 21 years after I had first entered through that very same red threshold as a frightened child. I went to a small nunnery beyond Asakusa, where the abbess was herself once an Oiran, and as she shaved my long black hair, she said only 2 words: "You have suffered." The temple sheltered over 20 small girls who had also been sold, and I began to teach them to read, to write letters, to keep accounts, and to protect themselves. Sometimes at night, I still dreamed of the vermilion lanterns of Nakanocho lighting up one by one, but when I woke there was only the chirp of mountain insects outside. I finally understood that the most beautiful thing in Yoshiwara was never the Oiran herself, but the ordinary woman who somehow walked out alive on the other side. That was the life of an 18th century Edo Yoshiwara Oiran. If you have ever been priced by another or walked a road that could not be undone, share your thoughts below. Next episode, vote a Republic-era Shanghai cabaret singer or be Vietnam War-era Saigon bar woman in the comments. This is a fictional dramatization for entertainment only.